Welcome to the Synergy Sisters podcast with hosts Debbie Prediger and Mary Gervais, two super connectors at heart who love building powerful relationships with visionaries and thought leaders. We act as a focal gathering point for people, ideas, dreams, and enterprises. We know that collaborations, connections, and trusted real relationships unfold naturally as you tune into your intuition. What is your heart whispering? We love to explore the big, audacious dreams of heart-centered entrepreneurs as they step into their leadership roles. We love weaving business and marketing strategy with spiritual development, energetics, and growth mindset.
Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Dr. Mary, and everyone else. Welcome. I am so excited to be here today to give you a little bit of background on myself. I have been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, and I am very passionate about connecting people and making the world a more honest and open place. I love collaboration and innovation where ideas are shared and we can improve things together. I'm currently working on my new brand. It's called The Taste of Love, and it will be out in July. And that is going to be focusing on individuals telling their story, connecting and co-creating an innovation with others, and bringing new ideas and ways of doing things through transformation.
Thanks so much, Mary. So my name is Debbie Prediger. I am an empowerment leader and strategist. I'm actually on a mission to connect heart-centered entrepreneurs and really create that awareness, that impact, and that transformation. So interesting that all three of us up here are really, truly, the transformation is at the heart of it. I believe that together we can make a difference, and one heart-centered entrepreneur can truly move mountains. So with that, I'm really excited to have Dr. Mary on here. Now, we met well over a year ago, and we've had several interactions. She spoke on many of my summits and opportunities, but this one is different. This is going to be all about Dr. Mary and her method of transformation and her story of why this is truly important. So I am super excited to introduce you to Dr. Mary, teacher of transformation. She's a professor, a transformation master. She's certified as an Enneagram coach. She's a student with Gabor Mate of the Passion Inquiry. And of course, she's an entrepreneur, a mother, and a grandmother. Social enterprise is super important to her, which that is just another level of her story. So Dr. Mary, welcome.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much, and I'm honored to join you today. Debbie, yeah, it has been over a year, hasn't it? I can't believe how quickly time has gone by. A little bit about myself. I think Debbie did a great job introducing me. I am a doctor with a PhD, so not a medical doctor, but a PhD, and my specialty is in I've got a PhD in philosophy with a specialty in systematic theology and what it means to be fully human. So for most of my career, I have focused what it means to be fully human. And to be fully human really means to live your truth, the truth that you were, that our creator made you to be. And I look at philosophy from a theological perspective with the idea that there is a higher being or whatever it is that has been involved and is asking us to be involved in the ongoing process of creation. I created or developed the method of transformation over the last 20 years. It started as a very intuitive process, which is now backed by psychology, philosophy, and medicine. I guess that's for now. I guess more will come out as the questions come.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you said it really started as an intuitive process and now science backs it. I love this, and I'm so excited to go deeper into that. So I have a few questions, and then my friend Mary has also some questions. Let's get this started. Dr. Mary, you talk about transformation, and I've heard you talk earlier about trauma. How does childhood trauma actually play itself out as an adult? What do you see happening?
When and the Enneagram, both the Enneagram and Compassionate Inquiry are instrumental in answering this question. So when we talk about trauma, there's two types of trauma. There's the big T trauma, which most people associate trauma with, which is, a war, rape, domestic abuse, alcoholism, being exposed to all that, which the ACE system would measure. When I look at trauma, I focus more, of course, we take that into consideration, but trauma as a little t trauma, which philosophically is when our ego starts intervening and taking us away from our essence or who you're born to be. And you notice that in a child very early on when you first see a child, they are so carefree and so authentic, and they laugh and they're just so joyful, and then you start seeing them act up, and that trauma is what has intervened and removed them and the stories they start telling themselves. Now if that trauma does not heal, it plays out in the adult years. And that's where I draw from the Enneagram, which help us to designate what that story is that you're telling yourself that repeatedly gets played out as an adult.
Dr. Mary, you have many different ways of interpreting this information. Let's talk about the Enneagram right now so everybody's clear right off the start. What is this?
So the Enneagram is a psycho-spiritual testing tool that not only tests the personality type, which there's 9 different lenses that we see the world through, but it also is used in my program as a navigation tool. So it's actually a mapping system, not only for me, but anyone who's been trained in the Enneagram will know that it's a mapping system. So it's a path for recovering your true identity. It's both a starting, but also a navigation tool. It's a tool for waking up. And it shows you how you get lost from your true essence. And when I talk about true essence, if you're familiar with A.H. Almas, he talks a lot about in his diamond approach, he talks about the true essence. It tells us how we get lost, but it'll also tell us how we find our way back home to our true self. It exposes the lies we tell ourselves, the illusions that we might tell ourselves, and the stories we still live in. So when that would be looked at in my program from both a very Carl Jung perspective, but also a Richard Rohr spiritually. It explains the why of how we think, how we act, and how we feel, but it also helps us to realize our gifts. It'll also expose addictive patterns. So I'm, in all transparency, I'm called the Enneagram 2, the helper and giver. So when I fall off the rails, when my ego takes over, I am addicted to helping. When I don't help, my ego will tell me I'm not needed, I'm not loved. So it exposes our addictive patterns, but it also can give us a deeper self-awareness of who we are. So honestly, it's a tool for personal liberation.
Wowzers. I know my friend Mary has questions and comments on that.
Yes, Dr. Mary, that's really interesting. It almost what I'm getting out of this is that it exposes your shadow versus your gift. So I guess I would say that, I'm a fixer. Like I used to think that I could fix everyone. And then I realized that no, I can't do that. So for me, that's just something that I look at. And of course that comes in when I'm fearful. I know that for sure. But how Mary, that's so interesting. So if someone comes in, because there may be people in our audience who have never done an Enneagram, and is it a computer test? Like how do you administer the Enneagram?
So there's various ways to type someone. There's the narrative approach, which is done through inquiry, spending time with someone, and developing what their understanding what their motivation is, and working through what tempts them, what their virtues and vices are. I use an algorithmic test. It's called the EiQ9, and it's a smart test. It works on, it's about 2,000 to 2,500 questions. You answer between 140 to 145, and it draws from questions that get smarter and smarter as it goes along. It is a faster way of deciphering your type, but I use that in conjunction with the narrative approach. So as you go through my program, we refine it, and you get so much information through the algorithmic test. There's other tests online that I also refer clients to. A free test is given by Truity. It's about 45% accurate. And then the Ready test, which is Russ Hudson's test, I think that costs about $12 to $15, and that's been shown to be 75% accurate. And when you're doing the narrative, you start mostly by really diving into motivation. So when you're right off the bat, you said, I want to fix people when I'm stressed or under pressure. I would start by looking and say, so there's a type called the reformer. And the reformer, their basic desire is to achieve goodness, integrity, and balance. They want to make the world right. And I come from a philosophical perspective. So I look at it that each of us has a bit of the divine within us. So the lens you see through is the seed of the divine that's been planted within you. So Mary, if you are truly the fixer, that is your gift and that divine seed, and it's supposed to be used for the greater good. But our gifts are also our crosses to bear. So when we are driven by our ego, it gets out of hand. So getting out of hand, I'm going to use myself as an example again. When my ego takes over, I overextend myself and offer myself to others to help them. But really, my ego is just saying, you need to be valued, you need to be loved. That is a gift, but if I don't learn to love myself and show myself self-compassion, I cannot be good for the other.
Oh, Dr. Mary, that is so true. I'm resonating with that completely. And I know that, my synergy is when I connect others and facilitate collaboration, innovation. I mean, that's when things all start to come together for me. I want to go back to the difference in testing because that's really interesting. I had no idea that there was a Truity and a Ready test, and thank you for sharing. The I'm not sure you didn't quite say accuracy, but the results of them. What other? How does knowing your Enneagram help you live more heart-centered and help us support our journey as we go along?
So when I talk about being heart-centered, it's our heart is the place within us that is most human. And when I say most human, it's most compassionate. All mammals have the ability, the capacity to be compassionate, but humanity takes it up a notch. And that's where Gabor's teaching has influenced me quite a bit. And our heart aligns with our gut and our mind. The three have to work together. And so understanding and living through your heart, the three working together will connect to your true essence. It helps you to live your authentic self. So what I know you talk about leadership, and I shared on the link that you can get from our download. I think you guys are going to share that link. But I share from a business perspective, I draw from Susan Steinbrecher, who says that heart-centered leadership means having the wisdom, the courage, and the compassion to lead others with authenticity. That is living your truth, understanding who you are at your core, transparency, meaning being honest about yourselves and your gifts and your weaknesses and your trigger points, and service. And that means that your gift that you're given isn't just for yourself to build yourself up. It's to contribute to the greater good. We have been asked to participate in the ongoing role of evolution. We are still evolving as a species, as a creation, and we've been invited to do that, and we're supposed to use our gifts. So the Enneagram helps us to understand what those gifts are. I draw from compassionate inquiry because that is an inquiry, a questioning techniques to help us get down to that moment of trauma that disassociated us, took us away from that essence, and has stayed with us and really interfered with our decision making and our living, that has chained us down. If we can get to that, that's where freedom comes. The freedom is in living true to who you were born to be.
Mary, I hope that answered all your questions. And I'm sitting here with a whole bunch of my own, so I'm going to pop in here. You know, you talked about we overextend ourselves, or we can overextend ourselves, and to come back into that alignment is that self-love, that self-compassion. Dr. Mary, with all of this different modalities, what is the similarity between all of them? What is that thing that truly says, this is who you are, and this is all of the ways that I find that out? What's that similarity?
So when we talk about living our authentic selves, my method approaches it philosophically, drawing from the philosophers, most importantly Aristotle, theologically, with the understanding that we are living a life God created for us and we're asked to participate in it, psychologically, which I draw from three people in particular: Maslow, Viktor Frankl, who looks for purpose, and contemporary Scott Barry Kaufman. Actually, four. Carl Jung is very, very influential. And then medically, from Gabor Mate, who shows us that if we don't live authentically, if we don't get down to the root of who we are born to be, it manifests into illnesses. And the Enneagram, I'm finding, associates personality types which can be associated with certain illnesses. So each of them, philosophically, theologically, psychologically, and medically, want you to live true to who you were born to be. Going back to that first moment, that initial being, that child who hasn't been tainted by the world, before the world gets to you and tells you who you are or how you're supposed to live. The authentic you is that moment right before that.
Wow, I just get full body chills as you say that. What a beautiful summary. Dr. Mary, I'm going to ask you to go deep, and I know you always do. So, can you tell us, what was that defining moment in your personal transformation? What led up to all of this?
So, Debbie, it's really interesting. I've thought about that question, and I have to say that there have been some wow aha moments that, and I will tell you, it's in looking in the rear view mirror that we recognize those moments. It's only when we learn to live present centered that we will see them in the moment, but in the looking back, we recognize them. And there were a few, and I have to say, okay, you're asking me to go deep, and I know you know my background. So I would say that Meeting my girlfriend, my best friend, who's still my best friend today, was one of those transformational moments. So there's good transformational moments, and there's the ones that drop you to your knees. So you have to look at every single one of them, because each of them have contributed to that transformation. And when I talk about transformation, what I'm really talking about is self-actualization, becoming who you're called to be. So the good is, my best friend, who's still my best friend, who showed me what I'm capable of. But there's the ones that shook me. And being in a relationship, I was in an abusive relationship for 6 years. That was a transformational moment. It rocked me. It rocked my world, brought me to my knees. It's actually the Richard Rohr story of falling upward. I got to the lowest point in my life, a point in my life where I wasn't sure I even wanted to be here anymore. But that moment changed, and he calls it falling upward because that gives you the room for growth and transformation. Then the next one was meeting my husband, another great one who taught me about love. The next one, definitely my kids. The next one was 9/11. 9/11 was a transformational moment for me because it had me asking bigger questions, more than just about me, but why this is happening to all of creation. And that's what led me. I was in the business world. I was in the fashion industry, and I left that because it you have to recognize when you're being called and touched at your heart. So we're talking about heart-centered. When these things are keep gnawing away at you, they're asking you to inquire. So I ended up at the local university asking, why is this happening? And that led me to a theology class, which led me to teach, which led me to realize that I didn't know anything about life and humanity. That led me to a doctorate. So transformation is an ongoing thing. I still work at it every single day. But when I look in the rear view mirror, I see both the good and the difficult situations that have helped me transform and get closer and closer to who I'm called to be.
Wowzers. So what was the one thing that you would suggest for those that are just waking up? They're just starting to ask those questions. You talked about a program earlier. Is that one of the things that you suggest, or what's the journey for somebody that's just starting to ask those powerful questions of themselves?
So I will tell you, first and foremost, thank yourself. Because if you're asking those questions, that is an indication that you're ready to have them answered, because it's a hard journey. It's really hard. It takes discipline. It takes honesty. There's four things that I say, and it's again coming from Richard Rohr. It takes honesty of looking at yourself and looking the good, the bad, the ugly, all the warts and everything, but the beauty that's within you. The willingness to work really hard, and what it takes. And again, I'm going to repeat it. It's hard work. And you're talking about a program. Yes, I have taken what intuitively I was doing for about 15 years. About 3 years ago, I started looking at it systematically and incorporating the other sciences. A year and a half ago, I was asked to basically write it all out and really formulate it, and that's what's developed into the method of transformation. It starts by being honest and looking at your story. Are you really living in the right story? And that is a very Carl Jung idea. And Mary, you talked about the shadow self. Carl Jung and Richard Rohr talk about the shadow self, and the shadow self is a good part of you. It's not something you should really get rid of. You should embrace it. It's just, again, your default that you go to. But I would say honesty, humility. You can't do it on your own. You need others. We develop in community, and sometimes we need a coach or a therapist, and you always need to connect to a higher being. All the major psychologists that I just named, those four, say that you have to understand that you're part of a bigger picture. Whether that bigger picture is a science or a higher being, you have to know that you're part of this bigger picture. And the last is surrendering. And that means being present, focused, and being able to deal with exactly what's in front of you. And Mary, you talked about wanting to fix. It's really hard when you are a fixer to be able to sit back and say, okay, what's going on here? And let's deal with it right in front of us, and not want to fix and look at, controlling it all. The Enneagram 8 has a tough time with that too, wanting to control it all. No, it's standing back, objectively looking at what's in front of you and using all your skills, all your talents. This is why understanding where your intuition comes from, your brain, your heart, your gut, your main intuition area that you intake information, utilizing that, and then dealing with what the answer is, because you have access to all the answers. You are already, I'm going to put it in quotes, programmed. We come with a blueprint within us that connects to this greater web to be able to have the answers. So yes, my program takes you from that first step of looking at your story. It helps you to gain clarity for what your goals are. What's your definition of success? Everyone has their different definition of success. Seeing what holds you back, recognizing your gifts and your talents, how to read and navigate your emotions. Emotions are evolution. Through the process of evolution, we have the ability to tap into our emotions, which give you they're the guideposts that help us to navigate where we're going. So being able to read your emotions is really important. Understand your main values. I draw from Brené Brown here, because she brilliantly says you should only have 2 to 3 values. And when you have to make your decisions, draw from those values. And if your decision doesn't align, if it doesn't align with your values, easy way to make your decisions. And Viktor Frankl says that between stimulus, what is asking you to make the decision, and your response, there's a pause there. And in that pause is your power. So all of this is helping you to draw from that power to make your decisions. I also look at this program that I've developed helps you to understand your virtues and vices. And I look at virtues not just from a philosophical, ethical basis, from a spiritual basis of connecting with the higher good. And vices and virtues are really your habits. What habits are derailing you from living your best life? And then I end up with understanding your purpose. And again, that's Viktor Frankl focused. We are born for purpose. And a lot of us, when we're on autopilot, we're really not being motivated or guided by our purpose. So it's really important to understand what your purpose is. So in my program, we, like Viktor Frankl did, you end up a 2 to 3 sentences of what your purpose is. And that helps steer you into living in the right direction and living your best life.
Wow, Dr. Mary, I love this. I have to say that my awakening started probably about 6 years ago. I was taking a yoga class, and it's just kind of funny how things start to flow. And for the last 6 months, I have been going through a coaching program and really doing almost everything that you are talking about. So I do understand that it is hard work, because you have to, it's like you're peeling back an onion, and you just keep finding one more layer and one more layer and one more layer, and you have to sit with it and you have to surrender. So what I would like to know, you had talked about the Enneagram and the CI complement. The CI. So how do they complement one another, or do you use them completely to serve different purposes when you're working with your clients?
So they do complement each other. One is a testing tool and a navigation tool that helps guide you. So it tells you the lens that you see the world through. Now, it is believed that it is nature It gets developed through your experiences, through nurturing, but you are wired this way. And scientist Dr. David Daniels started the research in studying babies, and he found that at 2 months, they could already start typing a child and know how they're wired. In the last year, it's been, scientists have come out and said, no, we don't have to wait till 2 months. We see from the moment of birth how this child is wired. And so then it's nature. And so that lens will tell you the way we look at the world, the glasses we wear that help us to decipher the story. Compassionate inquiry is a questioning technique. It's a questioning technique that helps to drill down to these core stories that we tell ourselves, to get them to see the story that you're telling yourself unconsciously, because it started way back when you were a child, within the first 2 to 3 years. It tells us what those beliefs are. And those beliefs may not be serving us anymore. It tells us where they came from. And it gets you into the body, because the body cannot lie. He calls it the wisdom of the body. The body cannot lie. Our brain can lie to us, because it will guide us to live either in the past, in the world of depression, or in the future, in the world of anxiety, that neither one exists right now. The body can only live in the present and stores, like a computer. It stores all those memories. Compassionate inquiry helps you to get out of your head and to go deep into the body that has the wisdom, the answers, to help guide you to the possibility of letting go of those stories and letting go of the hold of those stories have on you. So that's the difference between the two modes.
Dr. Miriam, can you give us an example of that story that we could be telling ourselves, that false narrative?
Absolutely. So, okay, so there's 9 different types. If Mary truly is the Enneagram 1, which is called the reformer or the perfectionist, these children have felt heavily criticized. They felt that they've been punished and were not good enough by their main caregiver. This is very, very early on, and it's always the caregiver. So a child has the choice. Is it the caregiver that there's something wrong with them, or is it me that something's wrong with me? Because of survival, the ego will help you to survive and tell you a story that something is wrong with you. So that child will say, I'm being punished because I'm not good enough. And so they become obsessed at being good, at not making mistakes, and to avoid condemnation. The Enneagram 2. The Enneagram 2, called the helper and the giver, they only felt loved if they're helping or pleasing others. Their personal needs, they tell themselves, it's very selfish. You are not allowed to have any needs. So they get discounted, they get ignored, and only their performance and what's expected of them matters. This harmed their ability to love themselves and sometimes others, because admiration that's a 3. Admiration replaces real love. The 2 says that love can only be if I'm helping. I jumped up to the 3. The 3 is, to get to the heart of the 3, they only believe they're valued when they're doing. So they only felt rewarded for what they do, not for who they are. So it's always what's expected of them that matters. So they only feel they're loved if they're admired. The Enneagram 4, which is what is the 4 called? The individualist. The individualist, or the unique individuals. There are muses. There are actors. These children suffer from abandonment. They felt that their caregivers didn't care about them. They were abandoning them. They feel alone. They feel cut off from their source of love. They don't feel seen or mirrored at all by their parents. And so they turn inwards to their own feelings to be able to cope with their isolations. These people live in a place of melancholy. They suffer from melancholy. It feels comfortable to feel sorry for yourself. The 5, the Enneagram, the observer, these are called the Einsteins. These children receive no meaningful interaction or emotions by their parents unless they presented knowledge, that they knew more. They shined because of what they did, because of what they knew. They usually had an intrusive or very controlling parent. As a result, they build walls around themselves, and they find comfort in investigating and knowledge. They live a lot in their heads. So they look for their own inner guidance. The 6 is called the loyal skeptic. They're very skeptical. They're the ones in the world that can tell us where risk is. These people, they're raised usually in a very unpredictable situation, and they lack safety, so they're worried about the risk and the dangers. They lose faith that they're being protected, and so they really turn to their own sense of defense. They doubt a lot. They disbelieve reality, so that's why they're called the skeptic. But they stick things out a little too long when they're under stress. So that's why they're called the loyalists. So they may not be comfortable at work, but they're too worried to take that risk to leave because they want to be part of something. So they tell themselves, well, it's too risky to leave, and it's better to be part of something than not. The Enneagram 7 is called the enthusiastic visionary. These kids were deprived very early on of nurturing and love, and were told to grow up really early. So they had to parent themselves, and they did this by finding joy in the world. What you will know an enthusiastic visionary because they are the epitome of joy for us. When you go to a party and there's the guy in the dance floor who is all fun and everyone wants to be his friend, that is most likely the Enneagram 7, because they don't like living in pain. So life is just all about fun and games. But the problem is they never deal with their pain. And so they become hyperactive, and they're telling themselves, don't look at the world realistically. Let's just be the over optimist, and let's just have fun all the time. The Enneagram 8 is called the active controller. These guys here did grow up in an unsafe environment, either emotionally or physically, and also had to mature really quickly. But they are the justice warriors, not for themselves only, but for everyone. They are our leaders, our activists. The thing is with them is that they have such a hard shell. They have to have this armor all the time because they're always fighting wars and fighting for the underdog, that they don't feel safe to show their vulnerability. They're afraid of being controlled, so they always have to control situations. When these guys are unhealthy, they're the bullies in the world. When they were little, weakness was used against them. So they focus on building their strength. The Enneagram 9 is called the peacemaker or the peacekeeper. They're called the crown of the Enneagram because they are our sweethearts. They can empathize and feel what all the other types are feeling, and it's all in the core of their being. These guys here felt overlooked and neglected, and that they're not that important. They believe their voice isn't important. They believe that most likely people wouldn't notice if they're in the world or not. They felt ignored, attacked for having needs or expressing themselves, especially anger. And so they decided to keep a really low profile in the world instead of focusing on, and they instead focus on the needs of others. They just aren't important in the world. So those are the 9 different types. And each of them have that motivation. The 1 for goodness, the 2 to feel loved, the 3 to feel valuable, the 4 to be unique because they were overlooked, the 5 to have some kind of mastery or understanding of the world, the 6 to have support and guidance, the 7 to feel satisfied and fulfilled because their home was just so horrible to live in, too sad. The 8 for self-protection and protection for everyone else. And the 9 for a peace of mind and peace in the world. So that's all 9.
Wow. I am sitting here writing notes and I'm not sure that I can even capture it all. And this isn't the first time that
It's a lot. It's a lot. I just threw a lot at you guys.
yeah, but I mean, this isn't even the first time. So I'm going to go back to one of the questions that I know is on a lot of people's hearts right now. And then, Jackie, I will go to you after that. So we have a question that was partway through this. So, like, let's go back 15 minutes. But here it is. When we've been traumatized, it is hard to be able to feel safe again and trust oneself. How do we actually know how to trust our intuition?
That's a great question. I say that it's important to work with another. You have to work and be with someone that you feel safe with, who can mirror you. That safety comes in and that connection with self will always come in the silence. So there's practices to be able to quiet the voices in your head that are telling you to be afraid, to feel shame, to be angry. That all comes from the ego. So the quietness, the connectedness with an other, the self-compassion, practices of self-compassion, all those things will bring you back to your essence, that will always feel safe, that will always feel like home. Hopefully I've been able to answer that.
It answered it for me. And if the person that asked it wants to come up, please come ahead. Because this really took me back and full circled what you were saying earlier, Dr. Mary, about why you do what you do. So, we can have different levels of trauma, and you talked about that at the very beginning. But really, the whole thing is coming back into that true essence. And in
Mm-hmm.
order to do that, we need to feel safe. We need to feel loved and supported and all of these things. So it really, that question took us back full circle, in my opinion.
So I think Mary had said something, it's like peeling an onion. At our core, we are essentially, humanity's essence is benevolence and love. Humanity, I'm going to repeat that. Humanity's essence is benevolence and love. It develops with each trauma, or as our ego starts developing. And remember, our ego is trying to save us. It's really there to serve a purpose. And for a time period, it really does. It's a survival mechanism. But as that happens, it's wrapping that core, that essence, with wrappers. With each survival mechanism, it distorts the appearance or covers that ability to tap into that love and benevolence. So, as Mary said, to feel that safety, we need to, she said, onion. I call it removing the wrappers, or in my program, it's removing the masks, because we wear these masks for survival, and our personality helps us to survive in the world, and we develop these masks. It's removing those masks and getting back to that essence. And that essence, that is where living true to who you are, that the result is happiness. And happiness isn't the highs that you think, it's the calmness, it's the peace. And when you live there, it doesn't mean that struggles disappear. It just allows you to deal with those struggles with the best of your ability and your skills. And as I said, when you do that and live present centered, you have the answers to be able to deal with those.
Absolutely. So Jackie, you have a question or a comment?
I do. Thank you. And Dr. Mary, Debbie's right. Every time I listen to you, it's like listening to an encyclopedia, and I get to learn a little more every time. Um, so my question was, and I think you just answered it, because my question was, life is a journey, and how do you really know? How do you know when you have reached that point of being who you were meant to be? And I think part of the answer was what you just said about when you can live in that calm. But would you add anything else to that? Like, how do I know when I've gotten there, Dr. Mary?
It's interesting because I call it coming home. It's a comfort. It is a calmness, a peace, a clarity. It really is like coming home. And if all of you guys can close your eyes and find a place in your home that is the most delicious place you can be, whether it's in bed with the covers over you, in a chair watching your favorite show, at the table with your family, it is that feeling. It's a coming home. If you are following a journey that causes the hard emotions, the difficult ones, the shame, the anger, the fear, then you're not following your truth. And that's why I say God has created us in such a magnificent way with offering us these emotions. Reading our emotions is really important. That is the biggest part of my program. It's dead center. I have there. It's 8 sessions, and dead center in the fourth. It's the most difficult one, but is the most important one of learning to read your emotion. And the Enneagram allows you to use what's called lines of integration that help us to move to different parts of ourselves. Because remember, although we see the world through this one lens, we are made up of all 9 types. So it allows us to tap into this different part of us, because when we are disintegrated, moving away from our essence, we are at that stress level that has moved us away to a part that is pulling us further away. We need to draw and follow the line to get more integration and lead us back to that place where it is calmness and peace and feeling like home. And it's interesting because when you're in a high stress situation, it's amazing how quickly that can feel like home and calmness until you're kind of plucked out of it and objectively look and say, "Oh my gosh, why didn't I do this a long time ago?" When you're in autopilot, you just function and work, and you don't realize that if you're not present centered, that you are working at that high intensity and that high stress level. So that's why you need that quiet, that self-compassion. I tell everyone you need at least 5 to 10 minutes a day to center yourself, but give yourself 30 minutes a day to reconnect with yourself, to see, am I on autopilot or am I truly living my truth?
That was a powerful tip. And I'm going to share that outwards later, because I have a series that I'm doing right now is called Wellness Week. And it's really about self-compassion, self-love, self-care. I love the way you said that. 5 to 10 minutes to center yourself, and then 30 minutes to reconnect. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we cannot live our lives fulfilled, or I shouldn't say it and we cannot, but it would be very difficult to be fulfilled if we were always focusing outwards for others
Yeah.
to give to us, when we have everything we need inside of us. And it's just such a practice, an old habit or pattern, that we're doing it the opposite way. And it's time for us to come home. It's time for us to feel this sense of connection. And then, of course, hanging around people like the people that are in this room also helps you, because we're not in that old pattern of gossip and looking elsewhere and what's wrong in the world, but we're looking to what's good in the world and what we can do about that. So Dr. Mary, this has been a fantastic conversation so far. We're getting near our end, and we have another question. Please just unmute and then tell us your name and ask your question, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Amir Hossein, and because I'm a foreign, maybe my accent or I don't have any special information about this topic, depression or how to be a successful person, but I'm just 26, and but I had a kind of experience about depression when I was a teenager, and I wanted to share that, and I want to say that for me it is not just finding a miraculous way or solution. And I think, the life is like that. You should work on your life and you should work on your mood every day. There isn't any point that you find a solution and after that, everything is okay. You find the solution and, you can use it for any problem. I do believe that, we should be aware of, the life that isn't, every day is a new day, and problems are different. And for me, I managed to work on my depression. I lost my brother, and but after that I started thinking that, okay, because of that I would be a depressed person. There is no way for me, and the life is a bad place, and I had no choice. But a few years ago, I decided to change. Currently I know that the world is not a good place. I accept that, and I try to, to try to do my best. My favorite movie is Seven, and there is a dialogue on that film that Morgan Freeman said, "Life is not a good place, but it's worth fighting." And I do believe that. But I was okay with that maybe for 1 year or 2 years. But after pandemic, I started thinking about my problems and the life. And whenever I stop my favorite activities, my daily life, and think about problems and the life, I think I will be at this first point, at the beginning point of my depression. So I do believe that there isn't any point that you can be sure that after that there isn't anything bad, and you can be just calm and you will have a peaceful life. I think, depression and, for some persons like me, I'm not sure about others, because some
It's
people are, okay, if there
it's a
isn't
great
anything.
point, and I love that you brought this up. So, Dr. Mary, what would you say to somebody that said, "This is just the way I am, and life's experiences have taken me there. There's nothing I can do about it. Um, I can't actually take my control back or responsibility for who I be." What would you say to a client like that?
At first, let me compliment you, Amir. You say you're young, but let me tell you, you're a very old soul, very, very wise. And I'm sorry that you lost your brother. That's a really difficult experience to have to go through, but you have pulled through, and you are correct. This is something you work at every single day. I still wake up every single morning with my routine and make sure that I work and be conscious and becoming who I'm called to be. I think there's a way of looking at this. And there's the one of the steps that is actually, it's the very first step, is to make sure that we're living in the right story. And there's the small story of me. And when you live in the small story of me, it's a very victim mentality, and it's looking at life like, oh well, this is it, And it's all, look at what's happening to me, and I don't have anything to do with this. And it's a very emotional story that is, if you're thinking about consciousness, because our goal is to develop consciousness. It's a very, and I'm not saying age-wise, it's a very immature consciousness where everything revolves around me, and I'm just going to have to deal with it, and everything happens to me. The second level of growth of consciousness is when we realize that, oh no, it's not just about me. I'm part of something bigger, like a family or a team, or at work I'm on a team, or friendship. And you realize, oh, okay, I'm part of something bigger. It's happening to us. And you start developing some kind of consciousness and a wanting to look in for the sake of the team or who the group that you're with. And that's kind of the middle level. Our goal when you're talking about transformation is to really focus on the story of the overarching story of us. That what is the big story and how do I fit into it? And that's all of creation. And I think, Amir, what you've been able to deal is look at this big picture and say, we're still in that sixth day of creation that has chaos, and that we're going to have to just deal with it. But I'm going to deal with it with the best way I can. And that's by looking at the tools that I've been given, the people I can work with, and that remember, creation at its core is good. And humanity, we've been told, is not just good, it's very, very good. But in the process of this ongoing process of creation, we're going to have some shifts that is causing more chaos and evil and bad in the world. And so in recognizing that I play a role in this bigger picture, then it helps us to deal with all of that. And we do that with working from our authentic being. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I wanted to mention that when I was depressed, and there were some factors that could help me to escape away from depression, and one of them was studying about the universe. I'm at the
Yeah,
time I'm studying cosmology, and it's about
absolutely.
what you said. What you said, it's about how tiny and how unimportant I am in this universe, and it's not about the whole universe are circling around me, something like that. And that point is very important. There are lots of people that have problems. There are lots of people that maybe missed some family member or friend, and it's not just about me. It's not personal. It's about human beings, and it's about life.
That's right. So that's where I say, I don't know if you realize that you consciously, you're much more aware. And when I say we need something bigger than ourselves, it doesn't have to be a divine being, like a spiritual being. You tapped into science and cosmology and recognized that we are all of the same, created of the same dust particle. It all becomes semantics. Where in religion it's called a creator, in science it's called evolution and that first dust particle. And you look at the stars and say, I'm part of this. That is the story of what is, and you are finding your place in it. That's your
I
savior.
Thanks a lot.
thank you so much for coming, both Jackie. Questions that were in the comments, Amir, your story, it helps everybody evolve and expand their consciousness. So there was a lot said here today, a lot. And yet, this replay will sit here for you to go over. And as you can process it and then go deeper, that next level will be there. Dr. Mary, you have a link that you wanted to share, and I think it's on your link tree. Do you just want to talk about that for a moment as we close the room?
I shared the link tree, which is to my web page and our other social media sites.
Yes.
Being that you are a group that talks about being heart-centered, there's a download of what being a heart-centered leader means for me. And like I said at the beginning, I draw from Susan Steinbrecher, and what she says, but I also have my own top 10 list, and it all stems around living authentically. It's know who you are. Know who you are, whether you're a leader as a mother or father, or whether you're a leader in an organization or with friends. Know who you are. Khalil Gibran says, knowledge of the self is the mother of all knowledge. Once you know who you are, it's easy peasy after that. Live present centered. That is key. The truth is only in the present. Live a balanced life, which it has to include reflection, prayer, meditation. Use your emotions constructively. There are gifts. Never stop learning. A leader who says, I don't need to learn, I've got all these degrees and I've been to these trainings. No, the world is continuously evolving. If you don't continue to learn, you will not keep up with it. You will fall behind. Know your role in the overarching story, which is what we've talked about here. Live in the overarching story and know your purpose and role in that story. And my program can help you to recognize what that is. Practice empathy. It's not all about us. To empathize, we have to work with the other, empathize where they're coming from. Practice empathy. Be not only open-hearted, but open-minded. Being too much of one or the other is very dangerous. They work together. Know your values. I've already talked about that. And strive yourself to be a good mentor. Those are the 10 things that for me make a good heart-centered leader. And that can be found on my website. There is a link for a download that you can sign up and you will receive this.
Thank you so much. So my dear friend Mary, please close out our room for us today. It's been beautiful.
Oh my goodness, this has been an absolutely amazing room. Dr. Mary, I've learned so much from you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your authenticity, and your transformation program is incredible. I just love that you shared your knowledge today, and all of the little nuggets that I know that we are all taking away. So I am signing off with love and gratitude. Dr. Mary, I will let you close out, and Debbie, then you can close the room. But thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who is listening today.
Yes, we really appreciate you. So I will give you the last words. If there's anything that you feel that you've missed, Dr. Mary, and would like to add, please do it. We just are so grateful.
I do want to thank you, Debbie and Mary, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share a little bit about my work and who I am. I will sign off with a quote from Socrates. He says that an unexamined life is not worth living. I say an unexamined life is not fully lived. So make sure you take the time to recognize who you are and know who you are at your core. So on that, I say thank you, ladies, and I wish you all the best. And gentlemen, by the way, Amir, thank you.
We've loved connecting with you today. And as always, we sign off with love and light, trusting that each listener knows in their heart they were created for greatness. We can easily see that greatness in you, and we would love to be part of your journey to your highest path of creating and living the life that you love. We'd love to have you join our community of heart-led world changers, visionaries, and thought leaders. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find us on all socials as The Synergy Sisters.